Welcome to the Swap Meet XLT Part 7. Well, if you're new to the channel, this is the XLT I bought at the Princeton Outlaw Grass Drags back in August. And I'm just going through it, getting ready for the trail. A little bit of modifications, put in a reverse chain case, nothing too heavy on this one. Just making a nice rider. And there's a playlist, and we're at part 7. So if you haven't watched all the other videos, go back and check out parts 1 through 6. So this time, I'm going to start in on the engine, and I always change the crank seals. Crank seals are cheap. They're like $6 a piece. You're crazy if you don't change those crank seals. I mean, that's what protects your bearings from dirt. It makes sure that you're not losing your mixture out of a bad seal. It just does nothing but good for you. So I'm going to get after that. I'm going to pressure check the motor, clean the carbs, hopefully drop it in and run it this episode. I guess we'll see how far we get. You never know. Sometimes there's some unexpected problems. So let's get after it. All right, well, I'm starting to get the motor ready for crank seals, so a couple things I did. One is I took the fuel pump off, and it smells like bad gas. This is going to come completely apart and get a genuine Mikuni rebuild kit into it. The other is I pulled all the oil lines off because I'm going to pull the pump off when I split the cases. So these big blocks of wood, this is to set the motor on, so I got a flat surface because I'm not going to peel that water neck off of there, that fill neck. So I'm just going to take the lifting rings off, and I suppose before I flip it over, I'll get the recoil off too. Doesn't matter. Could go either way, upside down or right side up. I can get it off. All right, well, the water pump pulley seems to be stuck on pretty good, and I've learned the hard way. Just don't grab your pry bar and start beating on the thing. They're pretty fragile. Use thermal expansion to your advantage. Aluminum expands more than steel. I think everybody knows that. So get that thing good and warm, and it should come right off. Now it's so hot I don't want to touch it, so, oh, there you go. It fell right off after warming it up. Way better than breaking it. Get that belt off there. All right, let's get these straps off. So before we do, we're going to note something here. One strap has a notch for the pusher bar, and that goes on the clutch side. Alright, next is the oil pump. I suppose technically I could leave it in, but I always take it out. So we need a little impact wrench and a hammer there. There, that's pretty stable. So make sure you get the right bit. I think it's a number 2. This is not the right bit. I can tell this has been apart before. There's a wobble to this screw. Ooh, she's pretty bent, so we'll be changing that out. And there's vice grip marks on the head. So, yeah. All right. So, don't forget your little thrust washer device. Don't lose that. All right, let's get the flywheel and stator off. So 22 millimeter socket on an XLT flywheel, at least on all of them I've ever worked on. Easy, easy. Got a washer in there. This one doesn't want to come off. Well, it'll come off with the flywheel when we pull it. SLP maximum duty flywheel puller. This is the ticket for these Polaris triples. So it's got a little protrusion. I always center that on the crank first. Back it off a little bit. Figure out which set of holes actually works. I think I usually go with these round holes rather than the slot. No, yes. There we go. All right. Snug those down. Lock that down. Put your impact in the correct direction. There we go. With a loud bang, it's off. Nice. Oh yeah, and that washer's loose in there now too. All right, when you look at your stator, the first thing you're going to see are these three really obvious screws. Don't touch those. You want the screws that are holding the backing plate on, which there are three, but they're way up in there. And those look like most likely a number 3, so I'm changing the bit on the impact driver. Yep. A little hammer action, and we'll have that stator right off. All right, you got this rubber plug, big square grommet on the wires where the stator goes through the case. Just gonna push that in. There we go. All right, we're ready to split the case halves. I didn't take the coils off. I suppose I should and just polish up those grounds. So maybe I'll do that quick, then I'll come back and do the case halves. Well, let's look at these seals quick. Doesn't look too bad on this one. But who knows how old that thing is? That rubber could be completely deteriorated. And, you know, with the smell of the bad gas in this thing, probably, maybe it had ethanol. And ethanol is hell on crank seals. All right, how about this side? Well, this one looks really clean, which is not surprising because it's been underneath the stator. But I do see what looks like some orange RTV, but it's also been redone with the red anaerobic case sealer, which is, you know, that's fine in my book. If you want to use that, you can use that. So, I don't know. I'm going to blow this off with the blowgun and split the case halves. All right, let's blow these case halves apart. I'm just going to start at the outside and work in because that's the opposite of the torque sequence. All right, one more time with the blowgun. I'm going to pull all the bolts out and split the case. There we go. Wow. Guess I got some cleaning to do in there. There goes my oil pump. Thank God it landed on the table and not on the cement floor. Oil pump drive, I should say. It just slips in. All right, now to actually take the crank seals out. It's super easy. Just lift up on crankshaft just a little, and they come right off. Yeah. You know, I've seen worse. Spring's still on. Rubber's really soft though. I think it was a little ethanol rotted. So I'm glad I took those off. All right, so I've already lifted the crank a little to get the seals out, you know, because there's ribs on the seals and grooves that they interlock into on the case. I'm just going to lift it a little more, and let's give the bearings a spin. The PTO bearing's good. That one's not bad. That one's livable. Livable. Gotta get this up a little higher on this end. Real good. Real good. Real good. So I'm going with this. I mean, I know some people, I heard the slightest noise and they'd rush out to just throw money at it. Well, I'm not going to do it. I mean, monoblocks are not super expensive. If it blows up, I'll find another motor, but I don't foresee that happening. All these bearings seem just fine, and I think they're going to run just fine for quite a long time. All right. Well, some time has passed while I've been cleaning. Actually, quite a lot of time. It was kind of dirty. So we're up to crank seals now. So when I'm doing the crank seals, I always give them a little bit of some kind of low temp or all weather grease, which is what I got in the gun here. And you don't want to go too crazy. You just want to get it wet all the way around so that your seal seals properly. So that looks pretty good. And then you just simply lift up your crank enough to get that into the grooves. Real good. All right, seal number 2. Same exact thing. A little shot of grease. That's probably more than I need, but I'll just wipe off the excess with my fingers. You just don't want those seals to run dry on startup. So pick up this end. Actually, probably pick the whole thing up in parallel and get that lined up right with the grooves. Perfect. All right. So when you're doing that, your bearings all have these pins. So there's notches over here on the case halves. They're facing towards me right now, and you can hear me clicking my pins down into those notches. So that's where they live for the duration. So the next thing I like to do is I have a thing of VES red. This is what I run in the Liberty Twin in my Pro X. And I like to give all the bearings a little pre-lube. You know, it's just going to help with startup a little bit if I can get even a couple drops of oil in there. I mean, whatever I can do to help it live is a good thing. I will add that I cleaned my hands before I started engine assembly, even though I'm not in some pristine, sterile operating room environment. My shop cleaner has pumice in it, so I actually ran into the house to use the sink with soap and water to get all the pumice off of my fingers. All right, let's get my 3-bond out of its carton. So I'm actually going to put the 3-bond on the other case half. You see this in the video? Good enough, I guess. So just because it's easier to spread it. Don't go too crazy. You'll look like a slob. People will judge you if you have sealant gooping out all over. If you put too much on, wipe off. So I spent a lot of time cleaning these sealing surfaces, as well as everything in both case halves that I could get to. And I don't know, I think it pays off. I think it's going to seal up better that way. All right. Now we make it nice and even with our clean fingers. Make sure that it's covered everywhere. All right, now I'm going to clean off the excess a bit. Basically, I'm just going to put a screwdriver down each of these holes. So these are the through holes, they're not threaded. So that works great for cleaning out. Another reason why I tend to put the sealant on this side. Good enough. Case half is going on. There we go. Still spins real good. And run them down according to the pattern in the manual. Final torque is going to be 18 foot-pounds. All right, we're going to torque with the torque wrench. Yeah, I know you guys love torque wrenches. You were all freaking out that I didn't torque wrench that clutch. All right, we're going to torque them all down with the torque wrench. I got to do something to keep this motor from spinning. The 18 foot-pounds is going to make it kind of want to walk around on me a little bit. So maybe I'll just lay it down. Yeah, that'll help. All right, so I got the motor laid down. I'm going to go around twice and go to 12 the first time. There we go. Only reason the motor is laid down is because I don't have a helper here right now. All right, that was the 12. Here goes the 18. All right, I got a bunch of stuff I like to do while the motor's still upside down. So we'll do the oil pump first, the pump drive. Just a little lube, because lube makes everything better. Maybe even put a little on the outside of the sleeve. Not that it needs it, but, you know, just help it go in a little easier. All right. Replacement screw procured from a parts engine sitting in an icy snowbank. All right, if you needed the impact to take it off, you probably need to put it back on with the impact. All right, once you get your oil pump on, always spin it over, make sure it's not bound up. Feels real good. All right, I think that's as far as I'm going with the assembly until I pressure check it. So I'll get back to that in a moment. All right, stuck my new oil lines on. Look at them, aren't they pretty? Nice translucent blue. It's a little thicker than original, but the clamps, as you can see, work just fine. It's a Stens line. So I got the link to that down below in the description. When you click those links in the description and you buy from them, you're supporting the channel. Amazon gives me just a little taste. So that's one more way you can help support the channel. Thanks. All right, it's the next morning. It's time to pressure check the motor. Leak down test, whatever you want to call it. This is a really important test to do because this is going to tell you if you have any air leaks anywhere, whether it's on the case halves, at your carb boots, anywhere. And there is actually a spec for it, and the spec is that it's got to leak down less than 1 psi per minute. So let me show you my setup quick. So starting at the carb boots, I've got these plugs. These two are double enders. The small end's a 34 millimeter, the big end's a 36, 38. That's just a single 34. And I don't know, that's just it. They're tightened down, because I've got 14 psi to this thing, and if you don't tighten them down, they're going to leak or shoot across the room. Got some fresh new plugs in, so I'm sure the gaskets will seat right. And then I've got these block-off plates made for the exhaust ports. Just had them burned out on a CNC plasma a number of years ago with a rubber gasket behind them. Just tighten them down just so that you don't lose any air out the exhaust ports. Now over here is the actual heart of the matter. This is the tester. So it's just an air fitting. It's a regulator, a ball valve, a T, and a low pressure gauge, and then a hose. And the hose goes to the impulse port for the fuel pump right here in this dark little corner. So I've actually been testing this now for 3 or 4 minutes, and it looks like it's leaked down maybe 1/10 of a psi. So this is a pass for sure. This motor is sealed up real good. Usually, if I find a problem with them, it's going to be at the carb boots. 9 times out of 10, if it's leaking at the carb boots. I just seal them up with some 3-bond. Unless they're the O-ring type, I might try to replace the O-rings. Also, the spark plug seats leak a lot. So those are the first 2 things to check. Otherwise, just get out your bottle of soapy water and follow the suds. All right, let's get the stator in. So I gave the grommet a little lube, and I tipped the motor over so it's easier to see. And let's get these plugs through. Usually like to get the big white plug through first because, well, that takes up the most space. And the ignition plugs take up a little less space and go through a lot easier. All right, I got the grommet back in. No wires were harmed in the process. I got the 3 screws in the stator as tight as I can with just a normal screwdriver. Now I'm going to come back with the impact and really lock them down. I just went by the timing mark on the stator and the cases, which also lined up with the marks from where the fasteners were. That's all I ever do. If you want to do a timing light thing and try to fine tune it and get that last 0.2 of a horsepower, have at it. It's in the service manual, but I don't know. For me, it's a stock sled. This is just fine. All right, let's get the flywheel on. So I got my spark plugs out so it's easy to turn over, and I rolled it so the key is at the top. That just makes it easier for me. Let's give your flywheel a good look-see. Make sure there's no loose magnets, no debris. Sometimes you'll pick up metal filings if you're not careful. This one's good to go. Make sure your bore's clean. Make sure that's clean. There we go, right on the key. The washer. Got the nut. All right. So how are we going to stop it from turning? Well, I'm going to back it off. So right there is top dead center when the key was at the top. So I'm going to back her off about yay much and stuff an old recoil rope down there. Now, don't go too crazy backing it off. You don't want to have that recoil rope do something like sneak halfway out the exhaust port or something. If that happens, bad things can happen to your piston and ring, or it can just make a whole jammed up mess. Either way, no good. So I just fill it up with as much of the rope as I can get in there. Since I don't have the pipe on yet, I will peek and make sure it's not coming out the exhaust port, and it's not. All right. "60 foot-pounds. There we go. Water pump belt. Obviously that's too loose. But don't go crazy with your tension. Don't kill your pump. I've heard the aftermarket pumps are not good, and I don't think Tim's rebuilding these yet. Hell, I don't even know if they're rebuildable. So tension it up a bit. You just need enough just to turn the pump. Even that's maybe just a hair tight. That's pretty good, right? I mean, it doesn't take hardly anything to turn the pump. So I'm going to lock her down right there. All right, so I'm putting the coils on, and I want to stop for a second and talk to you about ground and grounding. So this brown wire here, that's the return wire for all your spark for the whole motor. And this brass ring in here, that's a compression stop. It's entirely embedded in plastic. There's no electrical connection to it. And so you're hoping that you're going to ground from this bolt through this compression stop to the engine or through the bolt threads or whatever. I think it's kind of iffy and kind of hokey. We've chased a lot of problems that were very intermittent on these XLTs that came and went. And what I'm trying on this one, first time, I'm not going to tell you I've been doing this for years, I'm going to run an extra ground strap from this coil over here to the recoil. And let's see what that does. Maybe it'll help. Maybe it won't. It definitely can't hurt. All right, another thing I'm doing before I put the motor in, because I hate doing it after, is I'm going to get the throttle cable on the oil pump cable right now. I don't mind hooking up this end to the slides, but boy, this end down here, she's no fun sometimes. So we'll just do this right now, and the throttle cable can just go along for the ride while the motor gets swung back into the sled. One last thing I'm going to do is change the recoil rope. I've got a whole playlist of changing recoil ropes and rebuilding recoils. That'll be up in the corner, I think up in that corner. So check that out if you want to learn how. I'm just going to do this job off camera real quick just because I've shown it so many times already. Well, I'm going to cut off the video right there. I've been editing and it's kind of long, so we're just going to go with this for now. Really thought I'd have the motor up and running by the end of this, but there was just so much content. So I want to say a huge thank you to the patrons. You guys are the best. The patrons support us monthly. And if you see their name up there, they're a big shot because they're giving either $5 or $10 a month to support the channel. That's a big deal. That really gives us a lot of motivation to keep going. And anybody on the $5 and $10 a month tiers is also seeing the videos long before they're released to YouTube. So thanks, guys. You're the best. Another way to support the channel, if you just want to send us some cool parts like Mark Trottier did, or send us some dog treats or something like that, well, there's the P.O. box. That's down in the description. I don't know, seems to have gotten Mark's name set on a few videos now, I believe. And last way is PayPal. If you just want to do a one-time donation, just buy us around or buy a pizza for us or whatever, we now have a PayPal. That's also in the description. So last but not least, please hit subscribe. Subscribe is free. Subscriptions are free. There's no obligation. There's no way it can do you any harm. All it'll do is make my videos pop up in your YouTube feed once you hit subscribe. They probably are already if you've been watching them. And I want to say that I know that more than half the people watching these videos are not subscribed yet. So it really helps with growing the channel, and it helps with the YouTube algorithm to spread the videos around more. So if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. So with that said, we'll see you on the trails.